Hey, what is going on? It is Eric Bach, your host of the Look Great Naked podcast. Today, I sit down with world-class coach Tasha Whelan. Tasha recently won first place at the Arnold Classic Amateur World Championships for Strongman. In addition, she is a competitive powerlifter who won world championships in 2017 and has been a coach for 23 years. In addition, Tasha is the manager of Pro Club Strength and Conditioning in the Seattle area, a pain-free training educator, and runs Ideal Strength with programs and mentoring. Tasha is one of the world's best coaches, especially when it comes to building pain-free bodies in the worlds of strength and conditioning and competitive strongman. You're going to get a ton of wisdom directly in this conversation, both if you're a coach, but also if you want to maximize recovery and get the best bang for your buck out of your training. So enjoy this episode. And if you are liking what we're putting out, drop us a 5-star review, drop us a comment so we know that we can get more great information into your hands. Tasha, you've been a coach for what, 20 years now?
23, actually, yeah.
23.
23
Shit, you're in that
years.
Michael Jordan legendary status now.
Here I am. I know. It's kind of wild when you actually look back at how long you've been doing something, doing your job, doing your career, and like get over the 20-year mark. And I still feel young, and I still am young. I'm 40 years old, so I've been doing this since I was 17, but I have a lot of years under my belt and a lot of experiences and a lot of wins, a lot of losses, but it's been a good run so far. So
hey, you know what? You win or you learn. That's like the biggest
100%.
thing. I think a lot of people get started and they think they have to have just perfectionism in general is something I think we see more now than earlier in my coaching career as well. I mean, you start coaching when you're 17. I started coaching when I was about 19. And it's like people are so scared to make mistakes and try to be perfect with everything that they do. It can become really difficult and almost paralyzing for a lot of people to get started and to really beyond getting started, like really commit to a goal where they can achieve that excellence that they're looking for.
Yeah, I think as coaches too, I think that's a really hard spot to be in, be a new coach, because I think oftentimes we do feel like we should know a lot more than we actually do when we start off. I even made that mistake. And I think there's a lot of turnover in the industry too, is because they're afraid to not know everything. And then when, you struggle with things, you're too embarrassed to ask questions. And I think that's what I struggled with the most as a new trainer is I was so embarrassed to not know something. I didn't want to ask the question. So it took me that much longer to actually learn and grow and become a really solid coach. But then as I kind of stuck with it and as I got older, I was like, I don't know why I'm so embarrassed. If I don't know something, that's okay. Like I'm new in this. You don't have to know it all. Like that's what all the years and experience does. That's where you learn and grow and build your skill set. It takes time.
Yeah, like to become coaches because they've found the way that like they've been able to transform their lives. And inherently, like when you do something that changes your life, like you really believe in the things that got you there. And sometimes we can really fall in love with like the types of training, the nutrition plans, the approach that we had previously and hold on to it sometimes too long where maybe it doesn't serve us, or trying to apply it to people that it doesn't necessarily serve. Because to an extent, especially now with like internet and like culture and influencer culture and all that stuff, is more than ever, people want to somewhat be like the person that they are hiring. They want to somewhat be like their coach in many cases. Like not always. I mean, I've got clients who are women who don't want to be like me.
Sure.
Right. And I've got people with different goals and vice versa. But there's a lot more ego that seems to be attached like to the outcome in terms of what people do individually in their training and trying to apply it directly to others. And I think that can cause actually a lot of friction, and it can harm a lot of clients as well, especially if the programming doesn't meet them where they're at.
Oh, programming is a big deal. Actually, I just did an in-house education thing for my team on program design because, even again, all these years that I've been a coach, I'm still continually learn how to be a better coach with program design. And I feel like I have a pretty solid grasp at this point, but there's still so much that I don't know. And I continue to learn from other coaches too. But program design is such a funny thing to me because there's no one way or right way to do it. Right? But there are some better ways to do it and some suboptimal ways to do it, and a lot of things that you need to consider when you're actually designing a program. But I think where a lot of people misstep on that too is that they'll just kind of do one program for everyone when we know that every single person has individual needs, limitations, and even if you have 100 people with the same goal, is one program going to be successful for every one of those people? No, absolutely not, right? So, that's where like customizing and individualizing programs is really essential, especially in our career and our field, because that's what we do. We spend our time taking people through workouts, training them, trying to get them from point A to point B. So having a really solid grasp on program design, in my opinion, is really crucial crucial for long-term success in this career too.
No doubt. It's like you have to understand, like you can build a program based on key principles, which most people who share the same problem, right? Like let's say you got 30-year-old individual wants to be strong, lean and jack, but take care of their joints and they have a busy career, all these factors. Like, yeah, there might be some consistent movement patterns and some consistent rep ranges, but like the devil's in the details on how you navigate those things, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember when I was a coach, getting started, I loved all the deep scientific shit I can get my hands on. I'm reading like Verkhoshansky, I've got Tudor Bapa, and I'm like looking at these advanced programs. And for like 5% of my clients that was relevant, like the high-end athletes that I was working with, but like 95% of other people, you know, like Jill from accounting, like, sorry, it's not going to work quite as well. And so I think a lot of times it's like understanding all the knowledge and all the science and how things interplay is crucial, but never forget about the person who's actually directly in front of you or behind the screen and apply it directly to them. And like one thing I've personally learned, and maybe you've picked up the same thing, it's like, one, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know, but
100%.
also that most things can be simplified quite a bit when we pull back and look at what is actually missing from an individual. Like the diet perspective is, I was going over a diet log for a client the other day and they're like, hey, I'm struggling with snacking and I keep having these binges at night. And I'm like, okay, well, you've also missed your protein mark like for the last 30 days, right? So it's like, fix the one thing and it fixes all the other ones. And many times programming is the same way.
We overthink it too often. Actually, that's like part of my presentation that I give to coaches and trainers is like the KISS principle, right? Keep it simple, stupid. Although I use Sally or silly because, you know, I don't want to call anyone stupid, but like, I mean, really keep it like basics go a long way. And sometimes we feel like we need to get overly creative in our programming when realistically, more people need to spend time on the basic foundational movement patterns and develop that skill before we, you know, do some weird, wild, creative stuff. And I mean, you can get creative with it because that's what's cool about program design is, yes, there's a lot of science behind it, but there's also a lot of art behind it too. So it can be really fun and really creative and whatnot, but really don't need to complicate things. And I think we overthink things and overcomplicate things because we want to stand out and make things overly exciting. But that is not necessarily the best approach to things. Like basics, simple stuff can actually get people to their goals a lot quicker than trying to overcomplicate and be too creative.
No doubt. Yeah. Like when I look at my programming, I just got done training a little while ago. It was like most of my sets, 2 or 3, like heavy work sets, like 6 to 8, then I went 10 to 12, then like 12 to 15, like pretty simple stuff. Like I'm not always doing complexes. I'm not always doing clusters and rest pauses and working at like 95%. Like, yeah, like there might be push periods where you do that. But I think what happens is a lot of people like consume some of this like information and they get thinking that they're more advanced than they really are. And so somebody who breaks this stuff down really well, as you know, I'm sure you also know well, Jason Brown with his programming, he does a great job of simplifying everything. A great follow on social media.
Yes,
I think it's Jason Brown Coaching. Is that what it is on IG?
Jason Brown Coaching. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah,
love him.
He's fantastic. Great course for coaches, by the way, as well.
100%.
So Jason, shout out, man. Anyway.
Woo, we love Jason.
Yes,
I've
we
learned
do.
a lot myself from Jason, so he's a great follow. Yeah, I really kind of align
really
myself with a lot of what he does too. So I appreciate his approach and his style to things because mine's quite similar. So
yeah. Well, you know, one thing I realized is like most of the good coaches have a lot of similar programming because principles are principles. This comes down to applying it the right way.
And that's what it is. It's really the application of it. Yeah, 100%.
It really is.
You know, one thing that actually made me a really good programmer too is I actually, after I kind of got out of my head and realized that I don't need to know everything, I started hiring coaches and different coaches. Like Matt Winning, for example, I hired him so I can learn a lot more about conjugate. I've hired like Greg Robbins from the Strength House too to learn different styles too, and just different coaches just for learning's sake too. You know, and yes, applying it to myself and then seeing the results, but then also just really getting that knowledge base. So I actually have a deeper understanding of the whys by what other coaches are doing too. And then it gives me the opportunity to ask, well, why are you programming like this? What does this mean? What is this telling you? X, Y, and Z. And so I think people get embarrassed too to like hire coaches as a coach. So they're like, well, I'm a coach. I don't need a coach, or I shouldn't have to have a coach. There is absolutely nothing wrong with hiring a coach and a mentor so you can learn and actually have, you know, deeper knowledge and understanding of, you know, the principles in the industry. And, you know, it really just helps with our career, in my opinion.
Yeah, no doubt. And so wait, you're telling me that like you just kicked ass at the Arnold. We'll talk about that. Competitive powerlifter, you won a world championship in 2017. Yeah. Competitive strongman.
Yes.
Been a coach for 23 years and you hire a coach? Like, coaches hire coaches, you know, it
makes you better. It expedites the process too. Like truly learning from people who already know their shit, who've already been at the top of the game for a long time, are still in the game. why not hire them and learn from them? Again, it's made me a significantly more intelligent coach, and then I pass that knowledge on and I share it, and it makes me even better as a coach. So hire away, get coaches who know their shit and have been in it, and like if there's something you want to learn, a certain style, reach out, hire them, even if it's just a mentorship to ask questions. I'm always willing to spend my money to invest in myself and my knowledge and be better at my career or in my sport. So 100%, I will do that.
Yeah. I think it's just one of those things too. It's like we all have our blind spots as well. I mean, like we have these attachments to different types of like training, and like sometimes they don't serve us anymore, right? And like for me, whenever I hire coaches, I'm always like, oh, okay, I've got to like let go of this thing, and I've got to let somebody else drive.
Yes.
And that's kind of scary, especially with something like your body, especially when your body's part of what we do professionally, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's always an interesting experience to go through.
Oh, yeah.
But it's always very humbling because you learn like what you don't know, and then you can build a skill set and apply it in a different way, not only to yourself, but those around you. Now, let me ask you about this. So you just got back from the Arnold's, is that correct?
I did, yes. Yeah, on March 2nd and 3rd was the Arnold Sports Festival, and I competed in the Amateur World Championships there.
Yeah, and how did that go?
Whew, oh my gosh, I'm not going to lie, it was brutally tough. I actually had a really challenging week before that, leading up to it, the week before. So I was actually in Dallas at a conference at Raise the Bar. So Nick Lamb and Derek Mendoza host this. And it was a great conference, a lot of coaches, a lot of knowledge that I learned. And then from Dallas, I went directly to Columbus, Ohio, where the Arnold was. I was like, sweet, I'm going to give myself 5 days because jet lag flying back from Seattle to Dallas and Columbus, it's just too much before competition. It's like, cool, I'm going to do myself a solid, give myself, 5 days to be there and just kind of chill out and do my deload week. And then I got food poisoning. I'm like, fuck, like not now, like, come on. And it just kept getting worse. I'm like, no, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. And it got worse and worse. So morning of weigh-ins, I'm vomiting. I'm so sick. I have no energy. I'm throwing up and I still have to make weight. I'm like, well, I'm throwing up. I'm surely going to make weight. I went into the sauna. It made me sick. I started throwing up. I'm like, all right, I'm done. I know that I made weight because I just got done vomiting like 12 times. I go to weigh-ins and I'm standing in line. I'm so sick. I'm like, oh my, I'm just absolutely miserable. I had to leave weigh-ins to go throw up more. Came back and I was 0.8 pounds heavy. I have never missed weigh-ins in my life. Never. And I had to weigh in at 140.8 pounds. So 0.8 pounds heavy. I'm like, fuck. I got nothing in me. I've been vomiting. I have no energy. So I had to put my mountaineering stuff on and my jacket, my beanie, all this stuff. And I was in the back of the room for 2 fucking hours running back and forth for 0.8 of a pound. And I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm done. I got nothing in me. But I finally made weight. And then they put an IV in me to help, restore my fluids and all that stuff. I started throwing up again. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is just miserable. I couldn't, once you cut weight, you make weight and you need to refuel your body, right? I was so sick, I couldn't refuel my body properly. And I'm like, this is just going to be a real miserable world championship contest right now. And the next day when it was starting, I was going in to warm up for our first event. It was that overhead medley. There were 6 implements that I had to run through in 60 seconds and very heavy for the lightweight division. It was just insane. And I started warming up with like the log press, did a couple reps and I got real nauseous. I'm like, oh gosh, I got nothing in me. I'm so depleted. And I'm like, just kind of getting in my head at this point now too. And I'm like, how am I going to even get through this? So I start going, and I'm like, I actually crushed the first event. I'm like, okay, I got second place in the first event. I was like, shit, I'll take it for how I felt. I was like, all right, I actually did pretty well. Then I got through the next event, which was sandbag toss. And I won that event. I was like, all right, well, I know I'm a really good sandbag thrower. So
there you go.
I got it. So I'm like sitting tied for first place at this point, going into event 3, which was a 315-pound squat for 60 seconds, as many reps as you can. And that's just disgusting, right? I mean, I'm 140 pounds. We had to squat 315 for an AMRAP in 60 seconds. I got 13 reps, which I was very proud of myself for that. Yes. I got second place on that event. And then on the 4th and final event of day 1 was this sandbag medley to sled drag. So you had to grab a 180-pound sandbag, run down, throw it over a yoke, run back and grab another one. And this event, the floors were slick. I grabbed the first sandbag and I just fucking hauled ass. I took off down there and my feet started slipping. And when you're about to go down, you're like, I'm fucking going down. I'm going to fall.
I'm going.
And so I start falling and I slide through the line, which was great, but I slammed my ribs on this sandbag that was like concrete so freaking hard, and it knocked the wind out of me. I thought I was going to pass out. I thought I was going to vomit, and I just flew up. And I was like, I couldn't even think. I just got up and ran. And I finished the event and luckily got second place on it. I don't know how, because I'm like, I'm gonna die. I hurt so bad. But it was the final event of the first day. Top 4 people go to finals. So I was still at this point tied in first place. So I made it to finals. I was like, nice. That was my goal. Go to finals. But I was in a lot of pain. I cracked my ribs. I sprained my thumb and my wrist because I slammed it down into the ground. So I was just in bad shape going into finals. I'm like, oh, this is going to be so brutal. I couldn't sleep at all because every time I moved, my ribs hurt. And it was just freaking me out. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Final day, and here I am. I'm injured. I can't do anything. Can't move. I can't even breathe.
Yeah, because breathing with those ribs.
Yeah, it's so bad. The first event of the finals was a max deadlift. This is my best event too. Like, I love deadlifting. I'm a solid deadlifter, and I knew that I had the chance that, at winning this event, but I was hurt. So it's like, oh gosh, there's no way. So I was battling it out, and I won the event with a 500 pull, which was great. I was like, okay, well, I won that. So it put me ahead by half a point. So, okay, we have 2 events left to go in the World Championships. I'm ahead by half a point. And then event number 2 is Denny Stones. And if anyone knows Denny Stones, they're horrible, right? Two loads that are different loads that you have to hook grip to. I had a sprained thumb. And I'm like, how am I going to hook grip this with a sprained thumb and wrist? And then my ribs still. I'm like, and then run 3 different weights. And so I'm like, you just suck it up. Who cares? You've been in a lot worse pain before, so you just do it. So I hook grip these things. I got second on this event. So now I was tied again. And now it came down to the final event. And I had to tie the other person, in order to actually win this event. And she was going for, it was a max sandbag to shoulder. And I couldn't warm up for this event because my ribs hurt so bad. And I'm like, looking, I'm trying to pick it up. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm in so much pain. I can't pick this up. And so I see her go out there first, and she grabbed a 220-pound freaking sandbag and threw it up to her shoulder. And I couldn't warm up, and I've never touched that bag to my shoulder. I'm like, shit, I'm done. This is it. I'm not winning. I know. I'm like, oh, I'm just looking at her do this. I'm like, damn it, damn it, damn it. So I was kind of getting in my head again. I was like trying to talk to myself, right? Because a lot of it is mental performance. Like, that really does play a positive or negative effect on performance. So I'm sitting there. I'm like, okay, I can fucking do this. You fucking suck it up and you go out there and you give everything you got. And I saw this sign spinning on the ceiling that said, a wolf is never average, right? Wolf is my middle name. I go by Wolf. And so I'm like, damn straight, a wolf is never average. That's me. I'm the wolf. I'm not average.
Yeah.
And then they called my name to go out there. I'm like, fuck it. Let's get this. And I grabbed that shit and I threw it up to my shoulder and I won. I was like,
there you go.
I won the World Championships, but I won the World Championship. So there I am. Pro strongman and a world champion.
No, that's amazing. I mean, just the amount of grit that it takes to battle through any one of those injuries at once and being sick. Like being sick is awful. Like, when you're already cutting and then you get sick. Yeah. I mean, to a much lesser extent, I did a cut through December into January, which wasn't fun over the holidays. I'm not going to do that again, especially with family and kids and all that stuff. But like, I finally got to Mexico, and it was a couple weeks, or like flight delays, all of this stuff. I'm like, great, now I'm just drier. This is great for photos. And then I finally get to eat, like, I have like one day of normal eating, and then I picked up, Montezuma's Revenge, whatever, in Mexico, and I'm like, I couldn't hold anything down. I'm like, I just want to refeed my body. So like, feeling depleted, and then you add, let's add the pressure of a world championship, and then let's start, cracking ribs and spraining thumbs and trying to function. How do you, like, mentally, did you have any concern? Was it like, this goes wrong, like this is going to be a long-term lasting thing? Or at that point, because you're a seasoned competitor, for you, is it just like, fuck it, we're going to make it happen, we'll deal with the rest later?
On this one, it was more of a fuck it, I'm going to make it happen and I'll deal with it later. Like, I knew that there would probably be lingering things, after this, but I was there. I went there for a purpose, and I wanted to achieve it. And I wanted that win so damn bad that I was willing to go out there and just feel the pain if I needed to. But adrenaline was so high that I didn't really feel it until my body cooled down. And afterwards, when I started stiffening up, I'm like, ooh, yeah, I feel all of that now. So
Yeah.
I have not trained since, and this is going on, what am I, like day 10 or so. So
Yeah.
tomorrow's gonna be my first workout back. Ribs are still pretty darn tender, and my shoulder, because of it, is getting locked up too on the left side. But so I gave myself a pretty good recovery. I am smart though about getting body work done. So I have my massage therapist, my shiatsu people, my sports meds, physical therapist, cupping. I mean, I'll do it all. Like, I will do anything I need to do to get my body back feeling good too. So I will also do anything I
Yeah.
need to do to win.
Yeah, I mean that's the important concept, right? And
Yeah.
like you just made me think about something where a lot of people will see what others are doing, and then they want to like push as hard as they can in the gym. And I love to drive. I'm
Yeah.
an athlete my whole life. Like throw me in a gym. Like if someone's like, hey, let's see how much we could deadlift today. I'm like, yeah, like
Right.
might not always be the smartest thing, but it sounds like a good time. So fuck
Yes.
it, let's do it. But I think where a lot of people run into issues is they have no problem hitting the hammer, right? Like
Yeah.
let's just hit the hammer, but like, are we
Right.
actually pulling back and focusing on the other components? And so for you, as a competitor,
Yeah.
like through that lens, as a competitor who's willing to accept some of the trade-offs that happen when you're competing at the highest level,
Mhm.
and looking at the recovery component, like how do you navigate like optimizing the recovery from the perspective of the client? Because I'm sure people see you like, oh, I see you like grinding through and pushing all these, but then you have somebody who's maybe not competing at that level,
Mhm.
wants to
Yeah.
achieve some of the similar results, but like the recovery aspect is one area that they struggle with. Like how do you navigate that?
Well, I mean, just having those real honest conversations with them, so even during my training, like, I take my recovery very serious. I take my training very serious. I'm very self-aware too, very much aware of my body, especially being a highly competitive athlete. And I'm not stupid when it comes to my training. I might be stupid when it comes to competing because I'm in it right there. And I'm like, I'm already here. I'm this far. I'm going to push it
Yeah.
just a little bit more. But had this happened like even prior, like if I went in there like cracked ribs or I did something in training, I wouldn't have gone and competed. I would have had to bow out and really take into consideration my health and my physicality. Like at 40 years old, I mean, like I'm getting up there too, right? Like, so it's like I still have plenty of young years to compete. But again, as we do get older, recovery is that much more important too. You can't get away with as much stupid shit as you can in your 20s. So with my clients, I have those conversations. I do focus on recovery. We have real honest conversations about that. Like, I'll push them, but I am incredibly mindful about their recovery. And that is more so the focus on my clients is, are you actually able to recover from what we are doing, right? The minimal effective dose is kind of like how I approach things. Like, what do we need to do minimally to help you reach your goals while maintaining a healthy body, right? So it's really important for me to actually have those conversations with clients, because people do often just want to push, grind, or they don't have an understanding of what recovery actually looks like in training, right? So they'll even go, and I have clients that are like, oh yeah, every time I go into the gym by myself, I just max out. Every time you go into the gym by yourself, you max out? Yeah, isn't that what you're supposed to do? Nope. Okay, now we need to have actually a different kind of conversation too. So,
Yeah.
I think it takes for people too, a lot of trial and error too, to see like, okay, how far can they push their bodies? And then again, what is that minimal effective dose? And how can we recover from these things if we are going too far? So it's a lot of conversations that I have. And I think a lot of people are afraid to kind of have those conversations too, or not really sure how to navigate conversations like that, and to try to pull people back, because a lot of people don't want to be pulled back, right? They want to push. They want to keep going. But if I'm not pushing maximally all the time, like 100% effort, I'm not going to get better. But we know that recovery is really important, and we can't recover if we're always at 100%, right? I don't train at 100%. I rarely train at 100%. I usually do more sub-max lows and even a lot of dynamic effort. So we're working at like 30 to 40% of things, and more educating. It just comes down to educating our clients on things and having those conversations.
Yeah. Again, it's kind of like that risk reward trade-off where I think a lot of people will try to just duplicate what they see somebody else who's like competing at a high level. I mean, I think like the classic thing when I first got started, like lifting when I was like, I don't know, like 11, 12, 13, whatever. I'm like looking at all these like muscle magazines, and it's got, some like 2 hour long bicep workout. I can't even do a damn chin up. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like applying some methods. Like the number one thing in recovery is following a program that's properly suited for where you are now, not somebody
Yes.
else. Like that's the biggest thing, because if the dose, like the hammer that you're hitting is too big, it doesn't matter if you're taking an ice bath, like
Yep.
shit's not going to work, And so I think
Right.
it's getting clear on where exactly you are and being honest with your progress in that sense. Like one big issue that I see, and I mean, we can talk about these numbers at any point, but like people who have been lifting for a long time often are not out of the beginner stage because they don't lift correctly.
Correct.
And that's a super hard thing to have people understand because there's like an ego component. I had somebody else who like signed up for coaching recently, and I looked at their first workout and they're like, yeah, I've been training for 20 years. And then I see like their workout. I'm like, dude, you're 40, you've been training for 20 years and you're squatting 135. You haven't been training right at all, And it's like, shouldn't feel bad about that, but like, you have to have baseline levels of like strength and basic movement patterns. And again, I don't care what type of squat, what type of deadlift, whatever. You're not a power lifter.
Right.
It's like you have to have a really good baseline of very simple training before you need to do anything that's advanced. Right. Yes. And I think that's such an important component when it comes to that recovery process as well. And taking a step further, like you talk about how much time you spend focusing on the body work, like proper to maximize your results. Like you need synergy. Your training has to be focused with your nutrition, with your lifestyle. And these things, like when one area changes, the other ones have to change. And so like this stress dial we have on the bottom, like if you're all of a sudden getting 5 hours of sleep and you have all these deadlines at work, like, I'm sorry, you probably can't hit your diet as hard or your training as hard, even if that's the thing that you want to, because the overall system is stressed to the point where you're not going to be able to recover from it.
Yes. I also think people aren't flexible in their programming enough, right? It's like, well, my program today says I'm doing this. It's like, but is your body actually prepared to do those today? And a lot of times they're not. And people are like, well, I have to go for this. And that's when we see a lot of injuries too, is because they, like the analogy of writing your programming in pencil, not pen, right? Because you need to be able to be flexible with that. Even as coaches, especially writing the programs, I think that's even more important for us as coaches because we are the ones teaching and educating. We need to write our programs in pencil and not pen. And I've had a lot of coaches, so I mentor a lot of coaches, and they'll stick to that plan, even though their clients might be in a lot of pain or didn't get sleep and stress or fueling their bodies. But this is what I wrote out for them. This is the plan. So I have to stick to the plan. Like if you stick to that plan and they're not ready for that plan, then they're going to go further into that kind of, that deep hole of injuries or whatever it may be, or, like reverse effect, it's like, it's going to actually get them further away from their goals if we don't actually let them recover and really be flexible with our approaches to programming for sure.
Yeah. I mean, that's the biggest thing. Like I remember, especially working with like high level athletes and being like, man, you were looking stale in your warm up today. Like we're going to pull back off the load, like maybe instead of like pushing 85, 90%, like it's going to be more dynamic and it's going to be lighter and more explosive. So we still get, some CNS activation and these things that we're looking for, but like we're also not grinding. Something else you mentioned is like maxing out every day. I can't recall where I heard this quote. It might have been, it seems like something like from like Jim Wendler or Dave Tate, but like testing strength doesn't build strength.
Right.
And I think that's a really important concept. Like I max out like on a lift, like a dumbbell bench press, like 6 to 8, like, like I'll push that to failure. But like, if we're talking heavy, like doubles, triples, like at this point, like I'm not competing in any sports. So like I might touch that once or twice a year. Yeah,
absolutely. But I don't even that's even as a competitive strength athlete, I don't even touch my maxes. Like it might be a few times a year, depending where I'm at in my my cycle and my phases and competitions. But like I rarely go all out and hit extremely heavy weights because that's not where you're going to get strong at all. You're going to get strong in more of that, 80%-ish, range more so and doing sub max work. But a lot of people have that misconception. Well, I want to be as strong as humanly possible. So I have to go all out, max, grind all the time. But that mileage that they're adding to their body, their joints, their muscles, I mean, we want this for long term, right? And it's all about health and longevity too. And yes, getting strong and being conditioned, all those things are very important. We need those. But if you're just grinding day in and day out every single time, you're doing yourself a lot more harm and damage than good. And you're definitely not getting closer to goals unless your goal is to be injured and beat up all the time.
Yeah. And that's the hard thing. It's just like kind of stepping back from the ego just a little bit. From a programming perspective, I think like Jim Wendler to pop up like a name, like his idea of 5-3-1 programming is so smart. And it's like, take your max. I can't even remember, is it 90% or 95%? Like of whatever your number is, and base all of your training on that. Right. Yes. So like inherently you have the sub maximal training built in. And I think what people need to understand a lot about strength is it's primarily focused on your neuromuscular system, central nervous system, and getting more efficient at the movement, right? So it's like, can you build perfect technique while moving loads under control, but also fast and aggressively, And it's
Yes.
like, it doesn't mean max out and looks like you're a dog taking a shit when you're doing a deadlift. Like, that's not what we're talking about here. But it's like, can you dilate and perfect this skill? Because strength itself is a skill. And when you build the skill of strength, the beautiful thing about it, like, even if your goals are aesthetic, you just want to look great naked, whatever it is, like, when you're so dialed in on something like a squat, I can give it cue where it's like, okay, like, your squat's perfect. Now I want you to squeeze your quads all the way through. And when you get to the top of the movement, like, really focus on your glutes coming through with hip extension and squeezing your glutes. All of a sudden, because you've mastered the movement and you can more or less kind of do it in an automatic sense, I can give a specific cue that you can apply that's going to help you recruit that muscle much better from a physique component, and then you build it, right? And so, like, these are really nuanced things that are difficult to show people, but they make all the difference, which is why the basics are so important in the beginning, because they build the foundation to be able to master all of the elite level things that people are looking to do.
The brain is very smart too, and that's why I try to tell some of my clients, my coaches too, if we're always grinding and breaking our technique all the time, we're teaching the body that that's okay. And that's how we should be. But again, it's doing a lot more damage to it. So we got to train the brain just as much as the body, because that matters, right? Mind muscle movement connection. It's really important. What I also think a lot of people do in their programming that is not optimal is they will take their percentages off of their all-time best, right? Yeah. All time. But that was 5 years ago that I hit those numbers, but I'm still going to use those numbers to do my percentage work. So they're actually working at higher percentages. And it's usually technically the breakdown is pretty significant because they're going off of the wrong numbers. Because you hit a certain number once many years ago does not mean that that is actually the numbers currently that you should be going off of, right? It's training maxes are different than competition maxes or even 1 rep max.
Yeah, no doubt. It's like, listen, everything else has changed in your life except for your max. Like, come on now.
Exactly.
To steal 2 book titles. One, like The Ego is the Enemy, like fantastic book by Ryan Holiday, but like literally applies to everything in life.
Yes.
But something else you made me think of is, I can't even remember the title now, but the idea is like practice doesn't make perfect, but perfect practice makes perfect, right? Yes. And I think like that overall approach in terms of the way that people train is so important to be able to dial in and remove the ego component of it. Like, how can I do this and treat this exercise like a skill? And when you get that skill development, it just allows everything else to fall into place. Like for you, I mean, the programming is one huge thing, right? And you're pain-free performance educator as well, right?
Yes.
So that's one of the top certifications that coaches can get in terms of really being able to train intelligently and do so in a way where it's not going to cause a lot of joint pain and going to be huge for longevity. What are the biggest things that you focus on for recovery? First, like, let's talk about the programming sense, but like what else is incorporated into maximizing that recovery?
A lot of it for me too is knowing who you're working with, right? So, I mean, obviously you got to get a lot of information about the person in front of you. My biggest thing is always do no harm. Right. I mean, it should be for all coaches, risk versus reward, like we were talking about. A big approach, obviously, doing the screens and assessments. So really individualizing programs that's why it's really important, because it is about the recovery too. It's not just like, hey, we're going to go in here and train, but I need to actually program in recovery and program the right exercise selection, the right weights, all this stuff for the individual in front of me. One thing that we focus on, especially with the pain-free performance, is warm-ups. Because over the years, I mean, you can see that there's usually 2 sides of like the spectrum with warm-ups. Is people that spend way too much time like foam rolling. They're like 45 minutes, they foam roll every single bit of their body, which if that feels good, do that. But there's kind of a time and place for that. If you want to do it, maybe post workout and you're just kind of, cooling down, doing your thing.
Yeah. Can you explain that just a little bit more for the listeners? Like, why is it best in most cases to foam roll at the end of a workout? Like, what actually happens with foam rolling? Because the old belief was, oh, this is breaking up muscular adhesions like a knot in a rope. What's actually going on there?
And it's actually not, right? So that's a lot of people will think that like, oh yeah, I'm breaking up scar tissue, loosening up the muscles, all that stuff. But it's actually sending signals to the brain, right? So it's actually more for neurological components versus mechanical, right? So, I mean, if you find hot spots on your quad, right, it's actually sending signals to the brain and back to the muscle to say, hey, we're safe, we're okay. We want to like kind of release a little bit, but that's only the start of it, right? So again, people think that, oh, you can't foam roll your IT band, right? Because it's going to do damage. Is it actually going to damage something that you could pull 2 trucks and kind of tug on it and it's not going to break? But when we do foam roll, we're not actually foam rolling our IT band. There's musculature underneath it on either sides of it, right? So the lateral quads, all that stuff. So there's just a lot of misconception on what foam rolling does, what stretching does, what all these different things do. But if we actually have a good understanding that like, hey, no, it's for neurological reasons, right? We have dense tissues, those trigger points, and it's just once we hit those, it sends signals to the brain. And if we do the right things when we're foam rolling, like positional mastery is huge. People jump on foam rolls and you see all this ugly, weird flopping of the bodies and
Yep.
And if you don't put yourself in a good position during your warm up to start, you're likely not going to be in good positions during heavy loads or anything under load, right? So everything starts from the very beginning, which is the warm up. And a lot of people kind of go about their warm ups very nonchalantly, like, well, it's not that big of a deal. But it actually is a big deal because it actually drives recovery. If we prepare our bodies properly for training, then we're going to get a lot more return out of it for recovery. If we don't, recovery is going to be that much harder. So I always have people start with foam rolling. Foam rolling is a great thing. It's totally fine. But again, there's ways to go about it that are optimal and some that are kind of suboptimal. So again, everything's going to start with the warm up. But yeah, so we get foam rolling just to kind of get some, again, send some signals to the brain, kind of back down. And then we might follow that up with stretching. And again, there's a lot of controversy with stretching. Oh, I shouldn't stretch because it's going to make me loose and weak and then I can't move heavy loads. That's a crock of shit too, right? There's a lot of crock of shits out there. Like, we're not going to sit there and stretch for 10 minutes. Like, you do there's science behind it. And there's a lot of studies about, if you stretch for a static stretch for 5-10 minutes, whatever, and then go try to do max power output on a jump or something like that, or heavy loads, is it going to be good for you to do that? No, not ideal. I also don't encourage people to get deep tissue work done and then go under heavy loads, kind of give some time for that so you're not as loosey-goosey. But stretching is still very important, very valuable, especially when we're trying to open up ranges of motion, create a little bit more space in there, because our bodies do get jacked up. They get locked up, they get tight, and we do need to loosen that up. But again, we don't need to spend 45 minutes foam rolling and stretching, but it's also not a good thing to do absolutely nothing. Some people will just go right underneath the bar and start lifting. Their bodies still aren't prepared to do that lift yet, because there's some things that we can do: foam rolling, stretching, maybe throw in a corrective exercise, an activation exercise, and then we can go into some more explosive, like PAP, post-activation potentiation, right? You can go into some explosive movements to prepare the body in a proper way to then go under training. So if we prepare the body, we train, we're going to have a lot better of an opportunity to recover after training. And again, I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, is they don't really consider the warm-up enough, right? There's good, better, best. And so we do 6-phase dynamic warm-up in the PPSC, and we have found that has been a really solid approach to prepare the body to go train. And again, the goal is always to go train and then to recover properly. So recovery is huge for sure. And it starts with the warm-up.
Yeah, it really does. And even like mentally, right? Like the warm up is a time for you to start getting in the zone and to be focused on it, to like leave the bullshit, from work or whatever else is going on, and like leave it at that one place. One thing I've noticed with great coaches is like when they're going through the warm up process, like it's dialed in, like it's focused on the quality of the movement. Yes. One thing that really stands out for me is when I was a young coach, I was working under Lauren Landau, who's I think now at Notre Dame, and his hip series, his quadruped hip series. So we're doing, different activation for glute medius, glute maximus, all of this stuff. It was so focused on how well everything is being executed and maintaining optimal trunk position, having a joint stack position. So, I mean, if you're watching this or even hearing, a joint stack position is alignment between, for example, like your wrist, elbow, and shoulder vertically, like when you're in a push-up position or on your hands and knees, quadruped position. And being able to master these simple things, because in the case of the exercises we're doing, if we're talking like a bent knee, extension, we're trying to activate the glute maximus, so your big glute muscle, without substituting lumbar hyperextension. And so what do you see a lot of times at the gym? Well, you see, especially now with like Instagram booty chicks, like shout out, is like arching the lower back and trying to get more range of motion. And essentially what happens in a case like that is like, this is an idea of a good exercise being done poorly. You're substituting lumbar hyperextension for glute extension. And that's why your back feels like shit. And that's why your glutes won't grow, because you're not turning the lights on or creating a foundation of stability for an exercise that we really need to before you're going under load. And so I think what you're talking about here as well, it's like there are all these different things you can apply, but it's the quality with which you apply them that becomes so important. And that's why I think educating, the people that we work with is so important as well, because when people understand what we're doing and why, they can apply it and they can start to put the quality up on the pillar that it needs to be to maximize the results that they're getting.
The number one, like maybe not the number one, but a big cause of pain for people that go into the gym is poor positioning. Like it really is. People are like, oh, I have clients that, and I'm like, okay, we're going to do a side plank hip thruster. And they're like, oh, side planks hurt my shoulder really bad. I can't do side planks, whatever. I'm like, well, right? I'm like, well, get into position. Let me just see what it looks like. And they're dumping at the shoulder, right? They have the anterior humeral glide. Their neck's kind of all twerked. They're in a weird position. I'm like, yeah, that looks like it hurts. That hurts me and I'm not even doing it. But you get people in good positions. You get the co-contractions of the pecs and the lats to stabilize the shoulder joint, the adductors and the glutes to stabilize the hip joint. And oh my gosh, they're out of pain. It's like, again, it's a lot of it's positioning, and just people aren't aware of their bodies and what positions are actually optimal to be in. And that's why the warm-ups, again, are huge, because that is where, like you were saying, those mental checkpoints, am I, do I feel that mind muscle movement connection? Am I in good positionings? Am I focusing on my breathing? Because breathing is a huge thing. Bracing is, again, a big culprit on why people are in pain, because they don't know how to brace, because that's a skill, and creating tension throughout the body. Yeah, exactly. But like creating tension, a lot of coaches like get tight, right? We say that all the time. We throw it out there. Get tight, get tight. Do you know how many people don't know what the hell that means? Get tight. We got to teach them those things. And I think a lot of coaches forget that component of educating their clients on what tension is, like how to create tension, how to create those co-contractions to stabilize the joints, and then how to breathe properly to brace and to create, again, a stable, safe environment to load.
Yeah, that's such an important component. It's like, again, helping people understand what and why. So when you say these cues, they're not like, okay, yeah I'll do that. And really just blowing smoke up your ass because they have no idea what you're talking about.
Exactly.
And who hasn't done that too? It's like, yeah, have you been studying for your tests? Like, yeah, totally. Like,
yeah, definitely.
Okay, just don't ask me the specifics right now.
Right, I'm ready. It's fine.
So we talked about the warm up. How about the cool down? Because if there's one thing, admittedly, like if there's one thing that I skip, I'm busy, I got shit going on, like it's probably the cool down. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So like, what are some of the important components of the cool down, especially, we'll say like, especially from lifting, like cardiovascular, like, yeah, we want to have like venous return and all this stuff, especially if you've been redlining your heart rate. But like after a lifting session, what should people be focusing on?
There's a couple different approaches, really. I mean, I'm sure there's even more, but again, time-wise, because a lot of people don't have a lot of time. They're like, I got to go, especially people, I teach a lot of classes. And so people are like, I got to get to work, so it gets really, really tricky. But that's where, if we look at the warm up versus the cool down, and we were talking about foam rolling and stretching in the warm up, like again, where you're not taking it too extreme, where you're like doing 5-10 minutes of foam rolling and stretching. You really, realistically, in the warm up, you only need like 2 minutes of that. 2 minutes of foam rolling, 2 minutes of stretching, get the body ready and prepared to train. And you can apply those same things in the cool down, and that could look a little bit differently. So for example, foam rolling as a warm-up, I might just focus on the T-spine and the quads, because I know, hey, we're going to do a squat here, and T-spine is very important for that. We need to have some mobility there. And the quads, we need to get some blood flow there. We need to send those signals to the muscles, back to the brain. But then cool down, like you think about more global rolling, right? So you can actually get those like bigger, swoopier movements, spend a little bit more time foam rolling, do a full body foam roll. That's fine. It feels good. You're bringing the heart rate back down. You have to think about, we want to be parasympathetic in our cool down, right?
Yeah.
So as we warm up, we start parasympathetic. We come in, especially people in the morning. I'm tired. I'm just trying to wake up. So we start our warm up kind of parasympathetic. And the goal by the end of the warm up would be to be in a sympathetic state, right? That fight or flight, we're ready to go. Now you want to kind of do that reverse when you're cooling down, because you're already revved up now because of training. Now we need to bring things back down to parasympathetic so we can actually recover. And yes, you can do your foam rolling longer, maybe longer swoops, maybe spend a little bit longer than 2 minutes on it. Totally fine. Full body, great. That's the appropriate place to do that kind of foam rolling. And then even same with stretching. If you need to do a little bit more static stretching in the cool down, that's awesome. We do a little bit more dynamic stretching in the warm up, so it's going to look a little bit different. But a big part of recovery for what I do, my clients do, and my coaches do is parasympathetic breathing.
Yes.
breathing. Just fucking breathe, right? And it's like,
Exactly.
you want me to breathe? I'm like, yes, but I want you to be really mindful and really intentful with your breathing. So we will kind of turn down the music a little bit because music, gets you all going, fired up. But we'll turn down the music. We'll have people cover their eyes with towels. If they have headphones in, they want to put some light music on, totally fine. But kind of get into a darker space, legs up 90 degrees, offload the hips, and then arms out to the side, really focus on just breathing, like the S wave. You start in I don't want to say your belly because then people think I don't breathe in my stomach, but start low to high, just these really slow, mindful breaths. Spend 2 to 5 minutes doing that. Fine, get out, go. You did that. You came back down to parasympathetic, and that's where we need you right now because that's going to really spark the recovery process. And those people that just run right out of the door, they're not done yet. They haven't recovered. They haven't started that process. So they're actually going in their cars, huffing and puffing, now really breathing high into their chest. And it's just not helping them recover. So spending just legitimately 2 minutes, if that's all you got, get on your back, close your eyes, put your legs up, offload the hips a little bit, and breathe. And then I swear that goes a lot further than most people think. They're like, that's only 2 minutes of breathing. 2 minutes of mindful breathing really can change the body, right? So it can really help out.
It does. And in the words of Wim Hof, breathe, motherfucker.
Yeah. Yes.
But I mean, that's such a huge component. And I remember, working with combine athletes, they have so much pressure. We got 2-day workouts going on, trying to gear them up. And we finish every single workout with diaphragmatic breathing. Yes. And I think what people don't realize as well, and I just actually filmed a video on posture, so I was thinking about this, but like the vast majority of people, sit keeled over a keyboard from their phones, all this stuff all day with shallow chest breathing. And one, we have a decreased oxygen, absorption directly into our bloodstream and into our brain, which negatively impacts cognitive function. And in addition, it also drives up cortisol and stress. And so we have so many people that are excessively stressed now. And I don't know about you, but like whether it's like, 2020, all the bullshit that's kind of been going on in the world, like people are exceptionally more stressed now than at any point when I've been working with people over the last decade and a half.
Bad. Yeah.
It is. And like this little thing of diaphragmatic breathing at the end of a training session, like if you can't stick with meditation as a habit, guess what? If you start wrapping up your workout just by doing this for 2 minutes, it's going to have a profound impact, not only on your physical health and your recovery, but your mental health and your wellness across the board, because it teaches you to start taking these very small mindful moments. And if you can do it directly after a training session, it's going to it's going to calm down your nervous system. It's going to help buffer like the cortisol response that's happening as a result of a hard training session. And you're just going to feel so much better, right? And like that's such a huge takeaway that I think people can apply right away.
I also apply that at the beginning of a workout. If someone's coming in real stressed and they're sitting real high in their traps and they're just freaked out because they have meetings and and you can see it, right? And they're just like running late, like I'm late, let's just lift some weights, and they don't want to warm up, do this stuff. I'm like, you know what, we're going to actually just chill and we're going to do some breathing. So we'll just like spend some time before I even do any other warm-ups or any training. Some people, I just started them off with breathing to get them into a better position and a better state, better mindset. And it really sets the tone for them throughout their entire day, because if you can calm them down with you and not contribute to revving them up and having them in that just not a good headspace and physical space, then it's just doing them kind of disservice. So like, again, be flexible, because if they're coming in and they need to just go into a dark corner and breathe before you even train, even if, like I've had clients, we're not lifting today, we're going to actually just do some nice breathing and then maybe go through a warm up. Maybe we go for a walk, just because there's so much stress in the world. I mean, it's really unfortunate, and it really is affecting people so negatively. And then, they don't come to the gym anymore. They don't do the things that they should be doing to, promote their health and to get better. And so, I mean, again, as coaches, it's our opportunity to really, really help people here. And, so we need to take it serious for sure.
Yeah. It'd be such a big piece, and it's like some stress is always going to happen, but if
absolutely.
we don't proactively work on reducing it, it's going to starts to run your life to an extent, right? Because your sleep gets negatively impacted. You start to ruminate on it, and it can just be really difficult, especially when your body doesn't cooperate with your training because it's undernourished and overstressed and inflamed and has elevated cortisol from a lack of sleep and recovery, And so all these things are very closely related. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've gathered directly from this conversation is how interrelated every one of these components is. And we need to continue to work to improve everything. And in many cases, it's simple things like the warm-up that really help optimize recovery and deep breathing, right? I mean, these are things that you focus on and you're a world champion,
Yeah.
right? Like they sound so simple to people where they often forget about it or just say, yeah, no, I'm just going to go have a cold plunge and spend $2,000 on a tub. When in reality, it's like, breathe. And that's going to make a big difference.
And it's so funny when we tell people to breathe, they're like, but I breathe all the time. Not this kind of breathing. Like, let's just focus on that. I know it's amazing what it can do.
It's like I drink all the time, but like I'm drinking water, you're drinking vodka. It's a little bit different. So
exactly.
Awesome. Well, hey, what I want to do is just a quick rapid fire session with you. Cool with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, cool. So we'll start recovery. Most overrated recovery device that you've seen?
Most overrated. I really don't want to say the Normatec boots, but I kind of want to say the Normatec. They're cool and all, but I think people just do it because they're like, oh, this is cool. I'm just going to sit here and whatever. But I haven't really got much out of that myself. I tried it for a while, but yeah, maybe Normatec boots. There's a lot of things out there. What's that?
I do like my Normatec boots for my lower body, but like I've tried the upper
body. That's that what I yes. Like, no, have you tried the hip one? They have a hip. It's like a diaper. You put it on, and it's like it's weird. Like, so they're just kind of goofy and weird. I mean, they're fun, but I wouldn't say it's the most overrated, but it's one that I'm just like, I could do other things for it.
It's a pricey. One of the big thing with recovery tools is like they can be very pricey, and so like if you're not taking care of your sleeping, your breathing first, like you don't have to spend that much money on all this other stuff. I mean,
I probably have like literally every recovery thing. I have the Theraguns. I have the what are the ex-mother-in-law? What is it called? Do you know what I'm talking about? The ex-girlfriend. Oh my gosh. What are those things? Those big metal things. I can't even think of what they're body tempering type of stuff. Yeah, those are special and get really scary. They're really heavy and like dangerous. Those are interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. We've got all the tools too. You said that.
Like, I have everything.
Like I normally have my Theragun like sitting at my office. I'm like answering emails, like get my quad ready. But
I've definitely tried everything. What would you say?
Frankly, cold plunges. I think they're beneficial for sure, but like people are obsessing and spending crazy amounts of money on cold plunges. When this is a little bit of bias because I grew up in northern Wisconsin, freezing my ass off all the time. Like fucking 19 years of cold plunges is going outside. So like I don't need that shit. But like in terms, I mean, if you do a cold shower, like do a cold shower, that's fine. But like I think people fall in love with the idea of like just jumping in cold water from the recovery component, which again, are there benefits? Yes, but like, do you need to go buy one? Probably not. Just get a cold shower and do that first.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, that's fair. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. What do you feel like is underrated? What do you think people need to focus on for recovery that they don't?
That's a really good question. I actually don't think people get enough body work done, like massage. Honestly, but a really good massage therapist, someone that actually understands the body, because again, there's a lot of not so good massage therapists out there, but I just happen to have like a really good one, someone that really understands, that has like exercise science degrees, has, massage therapy certifications, got trained by like the top level of people. If someone really knows the body, so I really appreciate sports medicine massage therapists because they can actually fix you and do a lot of good to the body, but I don't think enough people go to the right people for that. So I think that's really, really underrated because I've had a lot of body work done and it keeps my body really, really happy and healthy and keeps me in the game a lot longer. So yeah, massage.
Yeah, that's one of those things. It's like one of those things where it's like buy nice or buy twice. Like, I'm like, I've had bad massages before. Like it can actually do damage,
100%. That's the right people are really important for it. And a lot of people go to massage for just like, well, I just want to relax. But if you actually got real body work done. So I'm not just taking like therapeutic, no, but actually get some real work done on your body to keep it healthier, the tissues healthier. That'll go a long way for sure, especially for recovery. Yeah.
Big time. Yeah.
But it has to be good people.
It does have to be good people. Buy nice or buy twice,
Right.
That's really what it comes down to. All right. What's your go-to training jam? You can listen to one song about the PR. What are you going for?
3 Days Grace.
Nice.
Yeah, what's my song there? Oh my gosh, it's like my go-to song. I can't even think about it. Let's start a riot.
Right. I was like, this animal I've become. That's one in there as well.
Yeah, that would be my go-to. Yeah,
love it. All right, you are on a deserted island with a barbell and unlimited weight. You can do one exercise and one exercise only to be as strong and jacked as humanly possible. What are you going to do?
Deadlift, 100% deadlift.
What is one exercise that you view most people do incorrectly where they need the most help on technique?
Burpees.
Throw uppies.
I don't like burpees at all. I don't program them in myself. And while a burpee itself is not a bad exercise. You think about it, right? It could be actually executed beautifully, but most people don't execute it beautifully at all. And it actually looks really disgusting. And I can't stand watching people do it at all. So I think people need a lot of coaching on that movement, but I think there's just in general, people need a lot of coaching on a lot of things. But burpees are just a weird one for me, and I don't like it at all.
Well,
but people
I feel you on that one. That's one of them for me too, because most people on a push-up, like their arms are flared out at 90 degrees and they have poor control. They can't squat and they can't jump properly
and they can't jump
technique to land. And so you throw them all in one and add a bunch of fatigue, like bad shit's going to happen. And that's the issue with burpees in most cases. So I feel you on that one.
Thinking about that, or speaking about that, even push-ups, though. Push-ups, a lot of people need coaching on push-ups. They do not do that. They pin their scaps. They don't allow protraction and right retraction. It's just pinned down there and then flared. So a lot of butchering of push-ups. So I'd even go with that too, for sure.
I agree on that one. One cue that's really helped a lot of my clients is like stop making T's, start making V's, and getting that slight tuck of your elbows. That just makes a huge difference in terms of like just the overall scapular rhythm and everything. And same thing on like a dumbbell bench press. One of my clients, we literally were on the phone before we hopped on this. He's like, "You put that video out and I started tucking my elbows on a bench press and all my shoulder pain is gone and I'm way stronger." I'm like, very slight little things make a big difference. Yeah.
Position matters. It does.
Exactly. You got to put your body in a place to win.
100%.
All right. So let's say you were on death row. We're not going to discuss why.
Okay.
We can't. That's a sealed indictment. But you're able to have one meal. It's your last meal. Anything you want to eat and drink, what are you going for?
I would go with prime rib, mashed potatoes, Caesar salad, a milkshake, and I'd probably put some rum in that milkshake though, just because I'm dying. And then a skillet cookie with ice cream.
Oh, God, that's probably the best answer I've heard of that question ever in my life.
Nice. Doesn't that sound like a delicious meal right now? Like, I just want that. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I'm about to go binge. Thanks a lot. No.
You're welcome.
All right. Last question. Going back to when you started training clients at 17. Mm-hmm. It's crazy. What's one piece of advice you would give to yourself at that point? And this is to apply, ask questions.
Yeah. Ask questions and hire a mentor. And even if you don't have, to be fair, at like 17 and even in my early 20s, I couldn't afford that. But that's like her hiring someone I couldn't afford. But ask questions. Like, don't be embarrassed. Don't be afraid to just ask questions and to reach out. Like, people are so afraid to reach out to people and ask a question because they don't know me. They're not going to want to answer this. And they just think that they're nothing. And these people are too good to talk to them. And that's why I tell people whenever I present, reach out to me. If there's something that you are questioning, and even if you think it's a stupid question, I don't care. I'm not going to think you're stupid for asking. I'm actually going to give you kudos for asking me something, even if in your mind it's dumb. So ask as much questions as you can and read a lot of damn books. Books are fucking fantastic and I just appreciate them. There's a lot of knowledge out there.
I'm all about books. Like, I'll listen to a podcast, but like I retain knowledge so much better with a tangible book. And when I'm doing it, like I'm highlighting, I'm writing inside of it. And then I write down all my notes afterward. I'm like, if I'm going to put time into reading this shit, I'm going to get it stuck in this brain 100%. And be able to apply it. So
yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining. Where can we find out more about you?
You can find me on Instagram at ironwolf03. My website is idealstrength.com. I also have a programming app. I'm going to do a shameless plug here because I have 25 programs on there for like $40 a month. It's a great app. A lot of programs on there. It's idealstrength.programs.app. So check that out because there's a lot of good stuff on there. And then you can email me, wolf@idealstrength.com. And if you are listening to this and you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me because I will gladly answer them.
Awesome. You are an absolute gem. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your wisdom.
Absolutely.
And
I appreciate you.
Make sure you check out all those links. All right.
Thanks, Eric.
Hey, it's Eric here again. Now, there are 3 ways that I can help you look great naked. Number 1, if you want to grab a free copy of the Look Great Naked protocol to help you lose body fat without counting calories, then go to bachperformance.com/free training. Number 2, if you're a busy guy looking to build muscle, then I recommend checking out our Minimalist Muscle Blitz, which has helped over 1,000 men build muscle without living in the gym. Just go to minimalistmuscleblitz.com. The link will also be available in the show notes. Or number 3 and last, if you want to work with me directly and get the best results possible, apply at bachperformance.com/coaching to look great naked without living in the gym. Until next time, my friend.